This is Bangladesh. It's probably not a country you've heard a whole lot about. Maybe that's because it's kind of hard to see on a map. Geographically speaking, Bangladesh is a small place, about as big as the state of Illinois. But when it comes to population, Bangladesh is the 8th largest country in the world, with 170 million people. That's 25 million more people than all of Russia. Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, is the 9th largest city on Earth, more populated than New York. But a few decades ago, Bangladesh wasn't officially called Bangladesh. It was actually a wing of another country, Pakistan, and it was called East Pakistan. And there's a really terrible story about how it got there.
A subcontinent larger than the whole of Europe becomes two self-governing dominions within the British Commonwealth of Nations.
In 1947, as British India was becoming independent, the British government announced the subcontinent would be split in two. In the center, there would be a Hindu-majority country called India, and outside it, with wings on the east and west, there would be a Muslim-majority country called Pakistan. East Pakistan was populated mostly by Bengalis, people from this big region here, which had been split between east and west in the partition. West Pakistan was populated mostly by Punjabis, Pashtuns, Sindhis, and a few other ethnic groups. Separated by over 1,000 miles of Indian territory and demographically and culturally split between groups from opposite ends of South Asia, this was a really weird arrangement. In the years following independence, it turned out not to work too well for people in the East. Even though East Pakistan had most of the country's population, they were shut out of the levels of power. The central government was dominated by people from the West. The real power in the country was the armed forces, and Bengalis only constituted about 5% of all military personnel. East Pakistan was treated as an internal colony of the West. The export earnings of its agrarian industries were siphoned off by the central government, and the region was neglected in terms of spending. And there was no better symbol of the East's subservient position than language. Because even though East Pakistan was a majority of the country's population, its most common language, Bengali, was given no federal status. Bengali speakers were treated like second-class citizens. So in 1970, Pakistan held national elections, overseen by a military dictator named Yahya Khan. And it was on the basis of this inequality between East and West that a Bengali nationalist party called the Awami League swept the election. Led by a charismatic guy named Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the Awami League won an outright majority, not just in East Pakistan, but in all of Pakistan. Rahman was set to become prime minister of the entire country. But to the Pakistani government, that wasn't acceptable. Yahya Khan thought that a Bengali party couldn't be allowed to form a government, so he refused to accept the results. Of course, this did not go over well in East Pakistan.
The bitterness of poverty and resentment in East Pakistan erupted today in a kind of civil war. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the leader of East Pakistan, declared the region an independent republic, which he said will be called Bangladesh.
The Pakistani government was furious. So the next night, they launched their response, a campaign they called Operation Searchlight. They branded it as a program of pacification to calm the situation and return things to normal. But their real plan was different. Mass murder on an unimaginable scale. And that's where the United States comes in. Bangladesh was not just another story about the problems of post-colonial states and artificial borders. This was a story that took place on an international scale. It became a violent theater of the Cold War, one in which America played an active role. Yahya Khan was a close ally of America's president, Richard Nixon. Nixon and his Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, loved that type of right-wing military dictator. Nixon even called Khan, quote, a good friend. So in the 1960s and 70s, the Pakistani regime became one of the largest recipients of American military aid in the entire world. Most of the planes, guns, bullets, and bombs that Pakistan was now flying into Bangladesh had been generously supplied to it by the United States. And with those American weapons, Pakistan unleashed a campaign of absolute terror, today recognized as one of the most ruthless genocides of the entire 20th century.
Now West Pakistan, which also has most of the army, is trying to crush the revolt. There are reports of many casualties in Dhaka and other East Pakistan cities.
When they arrived in Bangladesh, Pakistan soldiers put the city under strict martial law. Rahman was arrested, and any Bengali thought to support him was murdered. Yahya Khan personally gave the orders. "Kill 3 million of them," he said, "and the rest will eat out of our hands." Dhaka became a particularly gruesome sight. Huge sections of the city were bombed. Pakistani soldiers set older parts of the city on fire with flamethrowers or bulldozed entire blocks flat. At the university, soldiers massacred students and teachers. Within a few weeks, about 75% of the population of Dhaka had fled. But the Pakistani military didn't just stop there. The Pakistani army and its collaborators went into the villages.
People say the soldiers went wild, that they chose people at random, women, men, babies, shot and ran them through with bayonets. All the women, the people say, were raped before they were killed, and their husbands and children were made to watch their mother's degradation.
The numbers are staggering. At least 300,000 Bangladeshis were murdered, and perhaps as many as 1 or 2 million. Between 200,000 and 400,000 Bangladeshi women and girls were raped. About 10 million people fled into India in just a few weeks, one of the largest and most sudden movements of refugees in human history. A World Bank mission found that in every district, there were villages which have simply ceased to exist. One American official called it the most incredible, calculated thing since the days of the Nazis in Poland. A senior American diplomat named Archer Blood wrote message after message to the White House and the State Department, alerting them to the genocide and asking them to stop protecting the Pakistanis. "Our government," he wrote, "has evidenced what many will consider moral bankruptcy." But Nixon and Kissinger didn't care. "That consul in Dhaka," Kissinger said, "doesn't have the strongest nerves." Archer Blood's telegram got thrown in the trash. So as Pakistan was destroying Bangladesh with American weapons, Nixon and Kissinger knew exactly what was going on. And they weren't angry. If anything, they were impressed. The use of power against seeming odds, Kissinger says, pays off. That was partly because of Cold War power politics. After all, Pakistan was an anti-communist partner and Pakistan's neighboring rival, India, seen as a Soviet ally. So Pakistan was an essential outpost for U.S. interests, and its actions couldn't be opposed. And Nixon and Kissinger also held really racist views that led them to ignore the killings. What Nixon had to say about Indians in one White House conversation.
Undoubtedly, the most unattractive women in the world are the Indian women. Most sexless, nuts people. I mean, people say, what about the black Africans? But God, those Indians, apathetic.
When one American diplomat suggested cutting off aid to Pakistan to stop the genocide, Nixon put it bluntly, "I wouldn't do that to help the Indians. The Indians are no goddamn good." What Indians really need, Nixon said, is a mass famine. Kissinger agreed. He added, "They are a scavenging people." So Nixon and Kissinger stepped up aid to Pakistan. They illegally transferred more American weapons into the hands of Pakistan through American allies like Jordan, Iran, and Turkey. The United States even made an implicit threat toward India not to intervene by moving a nuclear aircraft carrier into the Bay of Bengal on the coast of Bangladesh. And as America assisted the genocide, the situation escalated. With so many Bengali refugees flooding across the border, India had to intervene. The Indian government gave its support to pro-independence Bangladeshi rebels fighting the Pakistani army. Pakistan responded by launching an attack on the Indian Air Force, and the situation turned into an all-out war. But with Indian intervention, that war ended in just 2 weeks. Pakistan surrendered and Bangladesh became an independent country. Yahya Khan resigned in disgrace. Rahman was freed and became the first president of the independent nation of Bangladesh.
The memory of what happened there may already be growing dim in many of us, but what did happen there will never be forgotten by the people of Bangladesh, especially the women.
But in Pakistan, there was never any trial of the war criminals. People who had carried out the genocide got away with it. The generals and politicians who had planned it remained dominant in national life. Even in Bangladesh, many people who had collaborated in the genocide continued to be prominent in public life, becoming businessmen and politicians. And two of the biggest collaborators in the genocide, Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, were never tried or held responsible for their role in Bangladesh. They had knowingly facilitated a genocide, had joked about it, had spoken positively of its leaders, and they got away with it. I'm Nashwa Zaman for the Gravel Institute.
It is the women who are silent, women like Saira. She is 16 years old, a widow, and pregnant with the child of a Pakistani soldier. Like thousands of women throughout Bangladesh, she is carrying a child she does not want.
She says that her husband was in the Mukti Bahini. He was a commander of the force, in the village. And this army people were looking for him, and they had broken into her house to take him away, actually. And when they were dragging him out of the house, she started screaming and protesting and crying, trying to hold back her husband. And one of them turned back and raped her in front of her husband, who was forced to sit and watch with guns pointed at him. And later on she
Like many women who were raped by Pakistani soldiers, Saira is in disgrace among her people. Her parents take care of her, but they are certain that no man will ever marry her.